Welcome everyone to our first series of webinars we're calling the Green Team Learning Labs. These webinars are part of a comprehensive Faithful Leaders training program. And tonight's, this learning lab is focused on conducting Green Team meetings, discovering your sacred vision. The flow of tonight's learning lab will be a presentation offered on how to organize your first Green Team meeting, enhance your existing meetings to facilitate finding priority actions that your team wants to carry out. Following that, we'll hear from a congregational team leader for about 10 minutes, and then we'll close out with a solution circle in which you can share ideas, actions, and questions for the last 20 minutes. You will be muted until the solution circle, and at that time, you will be able to have control of your own mic and mute yourself when you're not talking. So in the meantime, please post your questions in the chat box. So now I'd like to begin by inviting us into prayer. Creator of the universe, amidst all the changes happening on our earth these days, we bring our concerns for healing the earth, our common home. We're committed to caring for and restoring the earth, air, and waters, and we pray that the web of life may be mended through our courageous actions. Creator of all life, please guide our thoughts and words as we learn how to be strong and faithful advocates for your beautiful gift of creation. Amen. And so now I'm delighted to introduce our first presenter, Terrell Williams, who is a seasoned organizer and experienced trainer with Baltimoreans United in Leadership Development, which is otherwise called BUILD. And I'm going to say, take it away, Terrell. He's going to share with us about skills needed to have effective Green Team meetings.
Hi, I'm Terrell Williams, organizer and trainer with BUILD, Baltimoreans United in Leadership Development, and I want to welcome you to how to conduct your Green Team meeting, discovering your sacred vision. So my first question is, have we done our individual meetings? Because we know in order to build successful teams, we have got to be in relationship with people that we're going to work with. The reason for building those is for having those individual meetings is to build relationships, learn about what motivates people around the environment. What is their story? What are their dreams, hopes, and desires for God's sacred earth? 2, 75% of your time should be listening to people, and 25% sharing your own stories and your own heartfelt feelings around God's sacred earth. And then lastly, asking people, who are the 2 or 3 people that feel the same way you do about this precious thing that God has given us? Now, after you've conducted those individual meetings, hopefully hundreds of them. I mean, that is what, in many, many cases, what big change happens. It's an ongoing process that happens almost daily in my life around issues. I want to know, I am curious about people, and I want to know how they feel about different issues, especially when we're talking about our earth. So in these hundreds of meetings, I want to find out, what are the themes I'm hearing? What did I learn? Who am I still curious about? Who are the people that I believe are real leaders that have followers, people behind them? And I'm constantly asking myself, who are the other people that we need on our team to make change? And then how do we get to the part where we are ready to move forward, understanding what are the things that we need to do to address the issue? Again, what have I heard? What have I learned? And then once I get these leaders in a room, what is the relationship that these leaders have to each other? If they're part of the same institution, if they're part of the same neighborhood, How are they related? And then I want to find out, what are they willing to do together to make that change? So again, we're talking about inviting those that are most interested in caring for our environment. We're looking at who are most curious about our environment and who do we believe to be leaders, which means people who are ready to take action. We might think about, what is the best time to have this meeting to bring people together? And thinking about the 5 things that are absolutely necessary when conducting any kind of meeting. And that is, who will facilitate the discussion? Because we know we have people like myself who likes to talk a lot. And then we have people on the other end of the spectrum who don't like to talk very much at all. The job of the facilitator is to make sure that we hear everybody's voice. And then, who is the note taker? Who really enjoys taking notes? And then there's this other person called the vibes watcher. That is that person who's really curious about people, and they're not only listening to what people say, but they're watching how people interact with each other. There must be a timekeeper, and as we did tonight or today, make sure that we start and end with a prayer. Now we're ready for our meeting. At the time of the meeting, we want to, 1, why are we here? State the purpose to determine, so that the team can determine what are our main priorities. Set the regular time for any future meetings, because the one thing we want to make sure, once we get everyone, our proposed team together, what are the best times for us to meet? Because this will not be our only meeting. This is only our first meeting. And then we began to think about, what are the 3 or 4 specific questions that we want to ask that invite group responses. It may start with your name, your institution, neighborhood, or whatever connection you have to the area. And these are some questions you might ask. What would we like to do together? What are some things in and around our institution or our neighborhood that we would like to see greener and cleaner? What ideas do you have for coming up with solutions or projects? What are the resources or external partners that we don't have a part of our group that we need to have? And who are the power people that can help us make happen what we need to happen?
Excuse me, Terrell. I'm just going to make sure we caught up with you on our slides.
Yes, we're on slide number 6, the chart page. Next. Thank you. And then lastly is, what other relationships do we need to develop to help us bring this idea to reality? Because we understand, just like God's earth, things change, people change, their perspective change, and we've always got to be watching for leaders. Our next step is, now you are ready to decide how you move forward. You might decide that we want to meet quarterly, but I suggest in the beginning you meet a little more often, hopefully monthly, because this is a critical time to begin to start to build relationships between each other first, what we call internal relationships, that we can go out and create other relationships that bring other leaders in. So what we realize in building a great sacred green team, we must first listen, build one-on-one, have one-on-one ongoing meetings to constantly find others who are absolutely interested in improving God's sacred earth.
Next slide, please.
Next slide, thank you. And then how do we build, what kind of green team do we want? And who are the people on our green team, and what positions do they play on that team? What is the issue that we've agreed collectively that we will start on first? You will see that in those green team meetings, you'll have a vast array of ideas. And the question is, how can we build consensus to start with one idea? And then we can begin to work on those ideas that are important to other members.
And next slide, please.
And then next, we're trying to decide from the members on our green team, what is that thing that they enjoy doing? There'll be researchers who love to research. There'll be people like myself who loves to build relationships. So I would be the one that going out and doing a lot of the one-on-one meetings and meeting with people who might have power to help move our agenda. And then lastly, we've got to be ready to do something. A green team that deliberates and talk and not act is not a green team. It's a lot of people coming together to talk. And after we act, we must evaluate after every single action. I'd like to end with a small story of a young lady who was from one of the neighborhoods in which I organized. She bought a home about 30 years prior, and I met her in a neighborhood association meeting. And she was in that meeting arguing vigorously with the leadership. And it went something like this. I've been asking you over and over again for a dumpster so we can clean up the lots. I've been asking you over and over again for a council person to show up so that we can talk about our issues. And over again, the leadership would say something like, you all don't vote, so you don't have a voice. And instantly she got angry and she ran out and I ran after her. And I found out that she had purchased this piece of property 30 years prior with big dreams and big promises that big things would happen. But over the 30 years, the common space behind her house had been taken up by drug dealers. And all kinds of things have been happening in the back of her home, and she had no control at all. So for 12 years, they had not stepped foot in that green area. We had one-on-one meetings with everyone who lived around there. We built a team, and I'm happy to say that today, that is a picnic area for reading where there are trees, there's a rose bush. And out of that effort came the revitalization of a park, the Ambrose Kennedy Park in Baltimore, Maryland, that was strewn with litter and debris and refrigerators, is now a beautiful place called the Henrietta Lacks Educational Park. They have brought $185 million to their community for transformation, including a 21st century stadium for the St. Francis School that was one of the first to educate the children of slaves in our country. And they built a 65 mixed-use unit that they're currently building in a place that used to be infested with drugs. So as you begin to build your green team, it is absolutely important that you build relationships with the people that are going to invest their time and believe in the projects that you lead on. You've got to make sure that they have great relationships with each other and build real great relationships with the community. And if we're going to improve, I believe, God's sacred earth, it has to be done together. And just like we have to have a relationship with our God, we must have a relationship with our earth and relationship with each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Terrell. I believe that we've got a good time left here for questions. If anyone has any, please do type those into the chat box, and I will field them to Terrell. So far, I don't see any right now, but I'll begin just circling back to some of the things you said. I think one of the critical issues that you brought up about laying the groundwork for establishing your priorities is the building of relationships. And then once we have this gathering of either the first or a strengthened green team meeting, then becomes the real challenge and of narrowing down the ideas into a priority that we decide as a green team to pursue. And could you say a little bit more about that process of bringing those ideas together and distilling them or coming to agreement about one course of action?
Absolutely. So let's say that we're talking about there are several spaces in a neighborhood, and we've got 20 leaders in a green team meeting. And we would begin by putting people at 4 different tables and having people to talk about what space would you like to see, what space would you like to start with first, and why. And the whole idea is to get people relating to each other about why that space is important. Why is that space important to me? Why is it important to my neighborhood? Why is it important to the people who live here? For instance, what we realized in the example that I gave you is that I started with dealing with the drug issue on the corner, and I'm in the house meeting and they're talking about the drug area, they're talking about how much drugs is all over the city, but I kept hearing from the report back from the groups that we can't use our space behind our house. And immediately I said, okay, so I understand that there's a drug area on corner 1, there's a drug area on corner 2, there's a drug area on corner 3, but there's a self-interest drug corner right behind my house. So if we can land there first and do that, we can build the momentum. People can see what's possible, because that's something that we can do. We can do that ourselves. We don't need other entities outside of us. We don't need to go outside the group to clean up that park. In order to clean those corners, we got to create relationships with the mayor of the police department. We've got to talk to Baltimore City. There are other entities outside of our power that we have to connect to. But if we deal with this immediate thing that is right behind our house, we can get a couple groups to help us, to teach us how to plant. We can get a few people to help us get dirt, which is exactly what we did. And we restored that place by ourselves, which gave us the momentum. And the people finally believed that other things were possible, because we acted directly in their interest.
That is a great example, Terrell. I think of starting with something you truly have capacity to do, and you're equipped to bring it out and make, into fruition. I think that's the part about evaluating what the group is able to do, and then build upon that success.
Yeah, and that's the job of the person who comes up with the ideas. I mean, so if we go from, we have a multitude of ideas to tables where there are 4 specific ideas, those tables' job is to convince us that their priority is most important to all of us. And whoever does that best get the commitment of all of us on that first project.
Yeah, and it may be that a green team comes up with lots of good ideas. It doesn't mean they have to do them all at once or all right away.
Absolutely.
It could be some way of spreading them out over the coming year and setting priorities about these actions, the first, second, third steps along the way.
And I can tell you that our leadership grew with each success we had. With each success, more people believed. And now we have monthly meetings of 40 to 50 people every single month. And we started with 8.
Wow, that's fantastic. Are there other pointers that you'd like to share about, either some pitfalls to avoid or, some snafus that a team can get snaggled in that you might be able to prevent from happening by the way the meeting is conducted or facilitated?
I think as long as we're listening to people and reacting in their interest and not ours, because sometimes we get so fixated on a certain project that we try to fit people into what we want to do.
Mhm.
And I find that many leaders are not willing to do things that are not directly in their interest. Unless you help me understand, we understand that God's earth is in all of our interests. But unfortunately, we don't find people that connect those stories to their life. And it's about the stories, the fact that I lived next to a small lake when I grew up. And when I go home now, that lake is not there.
Mhm.
And that's pain for me. And so for me, when I see dirt and debris around water, it has a certain effect on me. So I'm not going to live next to a lake that's dirty. I'm going to galvanize a group of people that live around that because of my story and where I came from. Water is very important to me, and clean water is even more important. And so the loss of that lake, when I go and I see no water, it continues to affect me. And those are the kinds of stories that galvanize people to do something, to act.
That's great. It's a great example, Terrell. It's one of the exercises that we do offer in the Green Team training about finding your story and then sharing your story with others. And during those individual meetings is learning what their story is, how they feel connected with God's creation, the environment, what has motivated them, what has inspired them.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, I believe that sometimes we get confused that leaders are people with titles. In many cases, when you go into institutions and ask the leadership for three people that might be interested, it's usually the same 20% of the people that does 80% of the work. And so, and so it may be a good idea to start with those names that that leader give you, but don't land there. Ask
Mhm.
each one of them, who are the three people that are in the church that you believe want to do something, but they are not really active.
Mhm.
They're not really active. So how do we activate the people who are not active in the church? In
Yes.
many cases, people are not asking them to do anything. They're asking the same 20% of the people to do everything. And no one is coming to them that are quiet on the pews.
Exactly. And that reminds me, could you share a little more about the importance of talking to influential people who might not be a member of your team, but they have something in terms of experience with the community?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can go back to my days. I'm a former educator, and I can say the one thing I learned in education, if you want to know anything about the school, go to the custodian. If you want to know about the church, go to the custodian. In many cases, they've seen many people come and go. Go to the church secretary. Go to those people that have been there through what I call many administrations. And they can tell you everything about Miss Jones down on the corner, and Miss Lucy, who is the community mother, and Mr. Jones, who takes care of all the young people, and Mr. Bob, who cleans the street all the time, and Mr. Jim. They could tell you all those stories because they are entrenched in that neighborhood. And many times they spend more time in that neighborhood than their own at home. And I find those to be leaders that people really go to and listen to, and they know everyone.
Yes, and in our own congregations, there are these influential people who might be able to facilitate communicating with our spiritual leader, the clergy person, in order to make some of those connections or simply make recommendations to whom to talk to, right?
Yes, yes. And many people don't think they're leaders. They'll say something like, because they're used to the same 20%, When you ask them, or you no, I'm not a leader. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? And you find that they've done so many things, but they don't think they're active in the church. And I think our job is to activate the church and find new leaders in the church, new people who want to do different things. But sometimes you've got to go through the traditional leaders to get to the new leaders.
Absolutely. Well, we have about 5 minutes left. Are there any other points that you think you would want to strengthen or emphasize in terms of, the difference perhaps between an existing team that might need strengthening versus one that's just getting started? I think you laid a good foundation for how those who are trying to recruit members, the steps for that to happen are very well laid out. And perhaps those who, maybe their team needs some new blood,
Absolutely.
getting some new ideas and new enthusiasm into the mix.
Or we might need to agitate the old blood and get new blood. And so in the cases where I have teams, community teams, who have really kind of soured, I go in and do an individual meeting with every single member. Because I want to know how they feel. Do they feel the way I do? And I want to find out, why do you think the team is not as active? What would you like to see the team do? And what's stopping us from being active? What do you think it is? Why do you think that, we were rolling, everything was going great. What happened? And what would it look like for you to reimagine this team? And I would go to every single person and ask that question. And then I would bring them all together and say to them what I found out about you. This is what I found out about you. You are now this. Now, how do we move that? How do you want to move it? And let them take the ownership of what to do to go from a somewhat inactive team to a very active team. And sometimes you'll find that it's because a certain member has taken control of the group and it has soured everyone else. Or someone feels like they have a whole lot more power than another member who's very influential, who has now turned everyone else against that member. And so what the individual meeting does is does the investigation for you individually, and then bring your team together to say, oddly enough, not only did I meet with you, I met with you, and you. And let me tell you what you all said to me. This is what you said. How do you feel about that? And let's rewrite it. How can we rewrite this?
That's a great direction to go in. It's reinvigorating or even reforming the vision of the team. I think is a really great process you've suggested, because we have teams all across the spectrum, and I think that's great advice that you've offered. And I think we're going to close out now. We have just a minute here. If there's anything else, first of all, I just want to say how much I appreciate your time and offering your expertise, Terrell, on this subject.
Absolutely. I guess I just end to say, especially if you have a team that you think is hard to ignite, what we shouldn't do is bring all of our ideas to them and tell them what we should be doing. What we have to do is listen to what they want to do, because it could be that we're stuck in this cycle of doing the same thing, and I'm just tired of doing the same thing. I want to do something different. And so the question becomes, what is the different thing we want to do? And it can never come from the person who's leading. It has to come from everyone who's expected to do the job.
Well, thank you very much. That's a wonderful note to end on. I appreciate that. And I think we're going to move on to our next presenter. So thanks, Terrell. Our next presenter is a congregational green team leader, and that is Carol Griffith at Greenbelt Community Church. And she's going to share with us some of the things she's learned about being a co-chair at her green team.
Oh, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in tonight. We are a small church, about 150 members out here in Greenbelt. We belong to the United Church of Christ. We've had a green team for probably 5 or 6 years now. And so I have some helpful advice, hopefully, that we've worked through on our own. And I hope that some things will be helpful to you. So next slide, please. Well, I'll start talking anyway. Oh, here we go. Okay, so how do we engage people's interest in our existing team? The main thing I have learned that works is to have a new project constantly. It can be a small project, it can be working on a larger project, but something new. At every meeting, I try to have some new idea, some new suggestion. Now, maybe some people will not think it's feasible. They won't be interested in it. But even that discussion can spark an idea that is helpful. It's just something to keep the momentum going and keep people interested. We've had several projects through Interfaith Partners. We've gotten a cistern, and this year our big success is that we have a rain garden. So that pulled in everyone, in everyone's involvement. We pulled in most of the church on that to get their buy-in. So just trying to have a new idea. And where would you get these ideas? Actually, the community that you live in, that's always a good place to have ideas. The city of Greenbelt's very green, and we have what's called Climate Community Action Network. So we have partnered with them on occasion for some projects, mostly regarding composting. But that will give you an idea as to where your some of your efforts can go in the community. We are very blessed by having a very large wooded property. So there are things that come up naturally there. But we are a vibrant part of the community in the middle of the city. So that does spark some of our ideas. And also your denomination. We belong to the United Church of Christ. And on their website, they have many ideas about becoming engaged. They have what's called Creation Justice Ministry, and great ideas for smaller projects, and very helpful. They can be emailed at any time. We try to look out for what other groups are doing. There are various other faith communities in town. We have partnered with them on occasion for ideas. Just keeping an eye on what everyone else is doing is always helpful. They offer sometimes to help us. We offer to help them. It's a good thing, and it's a good way to get other people, the buy-in of other people. And then, of course, staying informed about the issues. I try to subscribe to a bunch of e-newsletters about what's going on, what the issues are, and that will spark an idea. But yeah, at every meeting, we try to have something, some way to move forward. And that really keeps interest going, keeps the momentum going. So then the other way is to play to members' strengths and interests. We have, a pretty diverse population on our green team. So we are constantly, having different ideas. We have different sets of focus. And again, going back to what Terrell said about building relationships and listening to people's stories, we have people who like to focus on recycling and greening the church building. We have other people, which would be me, who are focused on keeping the grounds more environmentally friendly. We are looking into becoming a sacred grounds organization through the National Wildlife Federation. There are some other certifications that are out there. We also are caring for wildlife. Since, as I said, we have a very large, very wooded area. We have birdhouses and bird feeders that we care for. And someone one of the gentlemen on our team, that is his absolute passion. So he, except when he's on vacation and needs help, he cares for the birdhouses, the bird feeders himself, and it's absolutely wonderful. We have other people who are into advocacy, and they will constantly tell us at our meetings about new issues going on in Annapolis, what we need to pay attention to, any opportunities to get involved there. So just, you have, and again, back to what Terrell said, you have to build relationships with people and see where their passions are and listen to their stories. Next slide, please. So then we have, this is an observation by having meetings for the past 5 years, and that is that I'm going to loosely say that people have differing strengths, the talkers versus the doers, just to make a quick observation. There are some people, no matter how well run a meeting is, what the focus is, that get fidgety in a meeting, and you can watch them see that. So we try to give them an opportunity for something. They are most happy to do a specific task or a specific project. Sitting in meetings is not necessarily their strength. So we try to get them. We offer them an opportunity to help someone else with their project, a specific task, or a new project that's coming up, give them a specific task. They are happy to do that. Just don't ask them to sit in meetings, basically. I have learned that about people. And they are most happy to participate. They just, like their meetings to be short and personal. So how do we inspire new people to join the team? We try to keep the congregation engaged. Working on the rain garden was a probably 8 or 9 month process involving, and that's through the Prince George's County Alternative Compliance Program. We had to go to our trustees, 2 of whom are pictured in the picture below, go to our trustees, get permission, work with them about placement of the rain garden, go back and work with the county, and that played to the strengths of numerous of our members. Then, with the actual rain garden its construction itself, we engaged the people who care for our landscaping. So it engaged most of the congregation. We did have a dedication and blessing. We had the mayor of the city come out. We had members from green teams of other faith communities come. It was quite the event. And that really sparked a lot of interest and got the congregation very engaged. They're very proud of it. And because some of them will bring neighbors and people to come see our rain garden. We're very proud of it. And then occasionally, and we don't do this very often, when we have a project going, we will ask the congregation for a donation. We have an announcement period at each of our services, and we will get up and say, hey, we're going to put in, the last time we asked for a donation was for birdhouses. We found some birdhouses on sale. We'd like to put some up if anyone would care to donate. So we have 3 times more birdhouses than we actually thought we would get, because many people came up and said, here, please, and gave us money for our birdhouses. Just things like that to keep the congregation engaged. And that we've gotten quite a few new members that way. And they also are very good about giving us ideas. Even if they're not able to help with the ideas per se, they're happy to give us ideas, and we're happy to have their input. That was all that I had actually to impart. But I did want to thank you, Terrell, for that story about the property that was rehabbed into the garden and whatnot. That's very inspiring. Thank you for that. Were there any questions?
Thanks a lot, Carol. I am apparently not seeing questions. If there are questions in the chat box, I am not seeing them currently, and I've asked if it can be sent to me at all. But that said, if they do appear, I'll let you know. In the meantime, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about how you've prioritized some of these events and actions. Has this been a process of, what's needed first, or the most number of people have consented to this particular action, kind of that process of discernment, since that's part of our conducting a green team meeting, is coming to an agreement about what is this step in our sacred vision now, and what might be down the road.
Well, actually, we have quite a few projects going at the same time, which makes it interesting for my co-chair and I to kind of keep track of what's going on.
Yeah.
We are working on the Sacred Grounds certification. We also have some projects going on about improving our grounds. We have an area in the back that would be behind where Anna is standing in that picture below that is full of invasive species. So we are considering applying for one of the mini grants through Interfaith Partners, but it requires input from our trustees that are responsible for the church property. So there's various small steps we take at a time, but we try to juggle various things at a time. We have one of our members has 2 very small children, so we try to find something that her children can cooperate with. They were very good about telling us where to hang our birdhouses, things like that. So we keep things going at the same, constantly. We don't just focus on one project at a time. Maybe we should. I don't know. It's busy.
I think it's a great example of inclusivity, really, because you're just giving an intergenerational example, and then, speaking to different people's strengths and interests is really what makes your green team effective. So you've given certainly a story about how that has succeeded in your experience. I would ask you, maybe in the minute we have left before we go to Solution Circle, your model of leadership is as a co-leader of your team. Could you share just a minute about how that's worked and why it's been effective in your case?
Well, my co-chair, Jane, in the red jacket in the picture below with me, we don't always necessarily agree on what our priorities would be. So it involves a lot of prayer and a lot of talking and getting some input from the congregation. But it's definitely a give and take. Neither of us gets exactly what we want all the time, but it's just it's an interesting collaboration. We always come to a satisfying resolution in the end, but I wouldn't say there's conflict, but there's some disagreement. It's a little difficult with a co-chair. I guess based on what I did professionally, I'm a little more used to being the owner of it, but it's an interesting thing, and I think it benefits the team in the end. We have better ideas and a collaborative way of looking at things, and not necessarily anyone's "this is my way" or the highway attitude.
Great. I think it's one among many models of leadership, having a shared leadership model, and so I appreciate you telling us about your experience with that. So I want to thank you, Carol, for sharing your experience, and especially all of the wonderful actions that your green team has accomplished there and is yet to accomplish in the future. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It's a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
So now our next part of tonight's learning lab is the Solution Circle. And so next slide, please. So every one of the learning labs that we'll be holding over the course in the coming months, we will have a solution circle following presenters on each topic. And the solution circle is wide open for discussion on the topic at hand, or something that is a burning issue for you, or an action that you're excited to share the story about what you're doing. So sharing and questions. Perhaps there's something that you're needing some answers about, or having some challenges with organizing your team and you have some questions about that. Or trying to get a project or event off the ground. You know, how do I do this? What resources do I need? And then perhaps there's other folks on the call that you could network with who've had experience with doing that kind of project or that kind of event that you might be able to collaborate with. So this is an open sharing time, and so we're going to be opening up the mics to everyone, and we'll take turns asking questions and sharing ideas together for about the next 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, so everybody's unmuted, so if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. But a couple of questions that came in that I saw, one was, I believe, directed at Carol. How do you measure team success?
That's interesting. I guess by the fact that we're, keep moving forward, I would have to say. There's always something in the works. There's always some interest around. The rain garden was actually our biggest success. That's the hugest thing we've ever tried to accomplish. And the fact that it was successful, we are doing our part, which is small, in maintaining it. I think that would be a measure of success but we don't, our meetings are very informal. We don't have metrics or anything like that. We're very, very informal, very casual, but we do get the work done. And I think just by the results, we had the cistern put in. We've done a lot of greening around the grounds. I think by the projects that we've accomplished, I would have to say would be our success measures.
Okay, I think some people are still saying that they are still on mute. So I'm trying to unmute other people. In the meantime, there was another question about mini grants. And the question was, can we use a mini grant to hire help with landscaping and yard maintenance? How would we answer that question? I believe the answer might be yes. But if there's anyone else, I don't know if you have any experience with this, Carol. Paying for, like, how do you pay for your landscaping and the maintenance of the rain garden?
This is Jody. I think Carol, excuse me. Can you hear me, Kolya?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go ahead and try to answer this question. And I think what everybody needs to understand is there is a microphone button in your control panel. And if it's red, you're muted, but you do have the ability to turn it back to green and you can speak. So maybe Carol was trying to speak and didn't realize she needed to push her button back on. As far as the question, can mini grants be used for regular maintenance of landscaping? I don't think that that's probably the best way to use the funds. I think the funds are going to be mostly designed to help you initiate a new conservation landscaping practice. I think in the past we've struggled to secure funding for maintenance. So if it's a new landscaping approach or you're converting landscaping into something that's more watershed friendly, yes, I think that's definitely applicable, but if it's for ongoing maintenance of existing landscaping, I don't think that's going to be something that CBT would fund.
And sorry, mine was showing muted by the organizer, so I tried to unmute myself and I could not. Yeah, that would be my general impression. Now, Bonnie, there with Interfaith Partners, obviously is the expert on the mini grants, but yeah, we've not gotten a mini grant yet. We are thinking of applying for one to have some invasives removed out of a very large area behind our church. We would try to put in a picnic area, perhaps a meditation area. So yeah, I believe that it's more for a little more concrete, ongoing projects and not particularly for hiring, but that's my impression.
Okay, yeah. So does anybody else have any additional questions? I can see all the attendees are muted, so just feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question or would like to chime in.
Hi, this is Walter Knathberger. Can you hear me?
Yep, you can.
Okay, I had a question for Carol on the Creation Justice Ministry that she referred to. Could she please describe a bit about that?
Hi, Walter. Yes, it's a United Church of Christ initiative. It's a certification process by which a congregation would become a Creation Justice Ministry. It involves, and it's a process through the congregation in which you engage the congregation, get their buy-in, that is something they are inspired and willing and very anxious to do. Get buy-in from the congregation. There are a few congregational meetings that are required to get input, and then there are various projects. One of the projects is to partner with what's called 350 organization. We are very fortunate in that we have one in our town of Greenbelt. Partnering with one of the organizations, there are other ways. And honestly, I haven't looked at the website for quite a while, but if you go to ucc.org, and I believe one of the tabs is environmental, you'll find something about creation justice. It's a process and requires signatures and buy-in from the whole congregation. But it has great ideas in there for projects to accomplish that.
Thank you. I was struck by the very much of the kind of justice component of Tyrell's work in Baltimore with Build, and how we could build a little more concrete, conscious engagement with the community along those kinds of issues. And I'll look at the website. I'm curious about that part of it, because we typically our congregations are not urban, and we don't have necessarily deal with the issues that people in those well-to-do neighborhoods do deal with. I like the work that IPC did together with the Anacostia River Keepers, once on their God's Water Heroes work, and that sort of linkage to community needs of that sort is also very important to look at, I think. So I'd be curious to see if those kind of ideas would come up from our own congregation as such, or whether we have to join our conversations with other congregations and different types of means. You know, I don't know, I'm sure how far I can go with that particular point, but anyway, that's good to see that there is that kind of process in place. That's good. Certification is an opportunity for the green teams to also be very much helping lead that process for wherever it is may be, including the certification of the wildlife habitat that National Wildlife Federation provides, that sort of thing. So that's, and what our congregation has done is also become a member of the network that sponsors monarch butterflies. And there are like 1,700 different places around the country that are monarch stations, monarch way stations. Anyway, sorry, I'm not going to keep on talking here. I'll just sign off now. Thank you.
So Colia, you can't be heard. You need to unmute yourself.
It wasn't allowing me because it was under organizer control. So did Terrell, it looked like Terrell was speaking, and I think his mic may have been muted.
Yes, it was. But
Okay,
I appreciate the comment. And I can say to you, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in our urban cities around educating people about our beautiful earth. I mean, I spend a lot of time helping neighborhoods to plant trees, but there's a lot of education that has to be done because people have many, many misconceptions about beautiful trees. And it is a big fight that I think we have to take on in educating cities about the importance of trees and how much of the fact that there are not a lot of trees in the city of Baltimore is a cause for a lot of our kids missing school. That's just one implication of us not working really aggressively in our cities to educate our people around the viability of trees.
Thank you, Terrell. Are there any other questions? Folks, we have just, we have about 5 more minutes remaining. I think we've heard some great examples of how to connect with our communities, how to listen to the concerns of our neighbors as well as those within our teams, and how to recruit new members who may not be aware of what we're doing or how their interests might be heard and put into action. I wanted to make sure that we didn't close out before we had some other comments, sharing stories. Well, if someone needs to chime in, we're going to go to the next slide as a closing, but we'll still have a few minutes left. But I'd like to highlight some of the ways that you can find more resources on our website, Interfaith Chesapeake Green Teams, and there you'll find the full schedule of these learning labs in the coming months. And each month we'll have another topic either around an action. The next month is going to be on legislative advocacy and how to get engaged. And also, following that, we're going to be doing a webinar on zero waste and looking ahead to how can your congregation prepare for Earth Month. So there's going to be lots of ideas, and all these learning labs or webinars are recorded, so they can be heard and listened to in the future at your convenience. You can also invite your green team for those folks who weren't able to be on the live call like tonight. We can invite you to listen to it at a time in which you can schedule your own green team meeting and watch the recording together. Then there's also resources that we posted. If you're challenged or struggling with recruiting green team members, you can go to the other link listed there for assistance and ideas and help, some creative ideas for finding those folks who you might not otherwise be aware are interested in caring for God's good earth, and be invited to have an individual meeting with them and listen to their interests and concerns, and perhaps join your next green tea meeting. So with all that said, our time's up, and thank you all for joining this learning lab, and we look forward to more in the future. And God bless all of your efforts to restore and heal God's beautiful creation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.